what I find interesting as well is, okay, those children had studied in that sort of area, now they're parents, and as parents they're encouraging their children, some of them, to do exactly the same thing, and then that creates that ongoing cycle then over and over again.
So we have what I call as a tribal cycle, and a tribal cycle is 5 generations, and tribal cycles are based on belief systems, paradigms, and things like schooling. Now, I was really lucky. My father, although he went to school and he got you drink.
Reach over to get my drink.
He went to school. He went through the schooling system, but he wasn't a massive advocate of the schooling system. So although I was encouraged to go to school, there wasn't that encouragement to go beyond school. And one of the biggest favours my father did to me was, he said to me, if you want to go to university, you fund it yourself and that's it. I ain't interested.
Right, okay.
And so basically, when we look at or my background and the encouragement that I had through the schooling system, my cycle was broken, and I was lucky because that made me think. And any bits of information that I had as a child, I always kind of, I'm a strategic mind. I want to know, if you give me a piece of information, I want to see the whole 360 degree of that information, and I'm not afraid to ask the questions around that. So I was lucky that my tribal cycle was completely broken. But most of the population, and they're based on the beliefs, or they're basing on the belief system that you must go to school because you've got to go to school, because if you don't do well at school, you're not going to get a good job. If you don't get a good job, you won't get good pay. So this is information that's being fed to children from the ages of 5. Well, the brain, if we're giving the brain a habit, if we are reinforcing that information to the brain from the ages of 5 to now the ages of 18 when people finish school, that's a lot of reinforcement.
It is, yeah.
How do we unpick that reinforcement? Because the other thing that children are not taught is that, we have an education model that teaches children that job equals money. Okay, well, there's a lot of other ways that you can get money. And then this isn't from I'm not talking from a greed perspective. I'm talking about from a survival perspective. There's assets. There's your own business. There's many different things as an alternative to actually going and exchanging time for money. Which is
what they don't teach in schools, isn't it?
Exactly.
And I think that's the level of finance that they don't teach in schools really is what they should. Talking about investments and different passive ways to make a living. And I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses. And then whenever anyone wants to then start a business, they don't have that level of education to manage their own cash flow and finances as well. And that's, I think, why businesses fail. So if you were able to put that level of education into the school system, whether they do want to start their own business or work for someone else, at least they have that skill set to make the right decision.
Yeah. The challenge we've got there, Ricki, that you are, you're talking about a cultural society. So with teachers, they don't forget they're also in a tribal cycle. Teachers, you need worker ants to create more worker ants, and that's what teachers are. And I'm not decrying the job that teachers do. I think they're absolutely fantastic. The amount of children that they take care of and they bring them through growth processes. So this isn't an onslaught onto teachers, but they are worker ants for the system, and they're creating more worker ants, and that's how it goes around. So you can't suddenly say to a teacher, "Hey, today we're going to start teaching about finances and business," because you've got to unbreak their cycle. And the 5 cycles probably that they've already gone through, their tribal cycles of paradigms and belief systems, etc.
Very true.
But and also, so if we go into an education system, or if we go into a school and say, "Hey, we're going to come in and start teaching you about entrepreneurship, finances, alternative investments, passive income," so if you're talking to a head teacher, you've got to unpick their belief system, and you've got to sell it to them.